And a great exercise to do with this principle is sit down and think about all of the things that you tell yourself and others about your horse. And go through them one by one. You can actually write it down and make a list if you want. But go through and say, is this valid? Am I thinking of this in a positive light? Or am I creating a negative self-fulfilling prophecy by saying this statement about my horse? And then go ahead and cross out all the ones that are negative self-fulfilling prophecies. And by each one of those, write down how you can work on that and how you could shift your perspective to see that situation in a positive light the next time you encounter it. Hello everyone. So in our last video, we saw Sundancer go over threshold when he wasn't sure how to handle the pressure he felt on the halter. We saw him jump away. The lead rope didn't slide out of the halter like it was supposed to because I let go of the wrong end. And so it was swinging around, banging against his legs and dragging on the ground. And this caused him to kind of prance across the pen once or twice. But then he stopped in the corner and collected himself very nicely, and I was able to go back around and ask him to target my hand, and we continued our session without any issues. Now, this incident has made me consider 3 more very important principles that I wanted to share with you guys in today's video. Before we start, I just want to go over what I'm doing right now with Sundancer. As you can see here, I'm having him follow the target, and this is our very first step to teaching Sundancer how to lunge. So what I'm doing here is I'm having him follow the target, but I'm also beginning to implement a walk cue so he knows what I'm asking when we begin lunging with the halter and lead on. All right, now back to these 3 principles. First and foremost, I would like to go over the mindset that a lot of horse people have, that their horse is being bad when it shows certain behaviors or when it doesn't listen. The main reason that this is such a false belief is that horses have small prefrontal cortex. And what that means is that they can't plan to be bad and they can't deceive you. They can't think, oh, today I really don't want to be ridden, so I'm just going to throw the saddle off a few times. They don't plan and, decide that they're going to be bad or do these things. So when they show a behavior that a human labels as bad, the correct way to go about handling this issue would be to ask yourself, what led to this behavior? What caused this behavior? And what facial cues and body language was your horse giving you before the behavior was presented that maybe you missed or you just chose not to respond to? Like I said, our horses are always giving us a live feed of exactly what's going on within their minds 24/7 through their facial cues and body language. So if we are aware of that and we have a correct understanding of what those facial cues and body language means, we can respond accordingly and we won't really find ourselves in very many tricky situations. You'll notice with Sundancer, that incident in the last episode was the only time so far that he's gone over threshold. And it's been over 3 months with this guy. So you can see that these incidents don't happen without precursors. Okay, so there's always going to be some kind of facial cue or stress indicator or body language that the horse shows us. And if we choose to ignore that, that's when we get into these sticky situations that we will have to deal with them going over threshold and things like that. Now, that is not to say that one-off incidents don't happen and that sometimes, in rare cases, there are no precursors and the horse just acts suddenly. Even in those situations, though, there will be a precursor, even if it's 1 second before the explosion or before the horse going over threshold. So just learn to look out and study your horse and learn exactly what's going on with them before they give a big reaction, and you'll be able to spot that more easily in the future. But none of this is the horse deliberately being bad, because they are not capable of the forethinking processes that are necessary in order to plan and scheme to be bad. That is a human perspective that we are certainly anthropomorphizing onto our horses. If you come across a horse and your tendency is to think, man, this horse is being really bad right now, ask yourself, what are they not understanding? How can I break this behavior down into smaller, more digestible pieces for this horse? Or are there external factors that are playing a part in this horse's behavior? External factors could consist of other horses being near, the horse being in a new and scary environment, the horse having severe separation anxiety or food anxiety, and a host of other health issues that could be the root of certain behaviors that we often deem as bad. And along this same note, the second principle that I would like to talk about today is don't allow your perception of past events to create negative expectations for the present. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Don't allow your perception of past events to create negative expectations for the present. Here is an example of what I'm talking about. Say someone is out on a trail ride and they come across a giant mud puddle and they try and ask their horse to walk across it. But their horse gets a little scared and starts freaking out and tosses them off in the mud. And this human begins to tell everyone and think to herself or himself, my horse is really scared of the mud. My horse is really scared of the mud. Hey, my horse is scared of the mud. Now, this statement that you've repeated to yourself and others over and over and over is going to start to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's because the next time you approach a mud puddle on your horse, you're going to be thinking to yourself, oh man, he's scared of mud. Please don't be scared of the mud. Oh, he's scared of the mud. What's going to happen? And then your horse starts feeling all of that uncertainty coming from you. And of course, then they are going to start showing the anxious behaviors that you expected them to show. And this goes for really any situation that we are a little bit scared that our horse is scared of. A lot of times, we, the human, decide, oh, he's scared of tarps, or oh, he's scared of black mats, or oh, he's scared of trailers, when that wouldn't really be the case if we worked on it with our horse with a different mindset going into these perceived scary situations. And here's what I mean by that. Let's go back to the mud situation. If this rider had not told themselves and everyone else 100 times that their horse is scared of mud, and instead just made a mental note, okay, we need to work on getting this horse used to mud puddles. And then the next time they approach some mud out on the trail, the rider thinks, oh, he's got this. He's going to do great. We've had some training sessions. He's been introduced to mud a few more times. And wow, yes, we can do this. Then you begin putting off these positive feelings that your horse can certainly read. And that will be the tone that you go into this scary situation with. And your emotions will actually assist your horse in feeling confident and feeling like they're able to handle the scary things, versus the self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, my horse is scared of this, or my horse is scared of that, or, oh, my horse always bucks when I lope off in the right lead, or whatever your self-fulfilling prophecies might be. And a great exercise to do with this principle is sit down and think about all of the things that you tell yourself and others about your horse. And go through them one by one. You can actually write it down and make a list if you want. But go through and say, is this valid? Am I thinking of this in a positive light? Or am I creating a negative self-fulfilling prophecy by saying this statement about my horse? And then go ahead and cross out all the ones that are negative self-fulfilling prophecies. And by each one of those, write down how you can work on that and how you could shift your perspective to see that situation in a positive light the next time you encounter it. And this will do wonders for your training, I promise. And the last principle that I would like to go over today actually has to do with the incident Sundancer had in the last video, where he wasn't sure how to handle the pressure. And this principle is that the horse always controls the pressure. And this is going to sound really strange to some of you guys with traditional horsemanship backgrounds, but I just want to talk about this for a moment because it's extremely important, and it's not something that clicked for me for several years into my horsemanship journey. And this is actually great timing with Sundancer here in this video because he's demonstrating this perfectly. So all I'm doing is very gently sliding my finger in his halter and putting a very slight amount of pressure on the side of his face until he tilts his head around to that pressure. And then I release it immediately in a click and reward. But what this is teaching him is that he can turn off the pressure at any moment by just giving into it the slightest amount. I'm not pulling on him or yanking on him or anything crazy. I'm not using excessive pressure or excessive force even. I'm just using one finger in the halter. And he's learning this very, very, very important principle that he can turn off the pressure by just responding to it in the proper way. So that's why it's very important that we take these small steps and teach the horse how to respond accordingly to pressure before we just hop on and start pulling their face around and expecting them to ride perfectly. And since that little incident, I've been taking care to do a lot more of this type of work with him so that next time he encounters pressure like that, he'll be more equipped to have the right answer and understand how exactly he can make the pressure go away by just moving away from the pressure. And along with this principle, I would like to talk a little bit about how pressure is not evil. I see, especially in a lot of positive reinforcement horse training communities, that they really demonize anything outside of using strictly positive reinforcement only, which is great if that's how you would like to handle your horse. However, you should consider the fact that if something happens to you, or if something happens and you need to sell your horse, or it gets passed along to someone else, or anything can happen. That horse is not going to be equipped for domestic life in most situations because they are not aware of how to use pressure and how to respond to pressure. So immediately when they get into a situation where someone is trying to use pressure with them, they're not going to know what to do, and it's going to cause them a lot of stress. But we can use positive reinforcement to teach the horse how to respond to pressure, and that is okay. There's nothing unethical about using pressure. The only problem comes in when we are using extreme amounts of force and pressure to the point where it causes the horse pain, and that pain is what forces the horse to listen to us. It's also extremely valuable for your horse to understand pressure in the event that there's some sort of emergency and your horses must be evacuated. Let's say maybe you're not home and there's a fire or a flood, depending on where you live. Your horse needs to be able to allow someone else to walk in there and halter them and lead them out without using treat rewards. So they need to be able to operate like a quote-unquote normal horse would for these emergency situations, if nothing else. So that's my 2 cents on pressure. And I just want to note here that you shouldn't demonize any training style that is ethical. If someone's using pressure and it's light and it's nice and the horse is happy, no big deal. If someone's using positive reinforcement only and the horse is happy and it's ethical, no big deal. Okay, we've got to stop putting ourselves in these little boxes of I'm a blank, blank, blank only trainer. The best trainers have a huge toolbox and they can blend their tools as needed for the horse in front of them on any given day.